Each of us have been at this for more than 20 years, and we're tired. Tired of hearing people think that they have no hope, no future, and that they will simply sit in their cubicles and survive working in IT. Well, we're here to tell you right here, right now, that you can thrive in IT, and we are going to prove it.
Bringing you great stories
About great people
in information technology
that it turns out are just like you. Welcome to THRIVEcast. All right, welcome to another edition of THRIVEcast. This is episode number 43. We are bringing the voodoo today. All right, we've got a great show for you today. This is gonna be a lot of fun. Talking to it. There's nothing like connecting with old friends, right? So that's exactly what we're gonna do here today. Before we get started, I do want to let you know that we do have a couple of special announcements to bring to you towards the latter part of the episode, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But I do want to welcome everyone. If you're viewing this live, as we do on a pretty much weekly basis around here, especially if you're on YouTube, go ahead and make sure you hit that like button and do the subscribe thing and all that kind of stuff. This not only helps us out by getting our numbers up, which is necessary for pretty much survival on YouTube these days, but it also helps other people that are just like you get notified of this kind of content as well. So if you do those things, it helps us out a lot. And you know what? While you're there, go ahead and subscribe as well. If you're not on YouTube today, here's a quick link to get to our YouTube channel and get subscribed. It's thrive-it.com/subme. Easy, right? But welcome everyone that's viewing live on YouTube, on Facebook, and Twitch today. I don't know if Periscope's dead yet, but it's not responding today, so it might be the early death of Periscope. So we knew it was coming, right? So we'll see. But anyway, so sorry you can't join us on Twitter today live, but if you are here with live today, just give us a shout out, say hi, and we'll maybe even say hi back. So let's bring on my co-host, Mr. Jeff Pitch. How you doing this morning?
I am doing fine. Looking forward to the snowstorm supposedly coming through starting tonight. The interesting thing is whenever they predict like big snow, it always gets walked back. And we have a TV station here. We call them Doom Team 8 because their weather people they get so overly excited about these things. And then I swear 90% of the time it never actually happens. So all their excitement is just law. It's just like, come on, people, man, we should learn by now. If we're predicting 10 inches of snow, we'll be lucky to get 3, that type of thing.
Yeah. So. And it's kind of funny because in Nashville, one of the TV stations lists theirs as code red weather. I was like, you can't be code red all the time. That kind of like, that story of the boy who cried wolf, if you're always code red, if you're always like on that emotional, push button, then people are going to start ignoring you, or they're just not going to know what an actual alert is. So
and that was not political in nature, but just as an example, when Homeland Security was first introduced, and remember they had like those 5 levels of alertness.
Yeah.
And we were always in the middle. And it was basically said, we will always be in the middle unless it goes up. And I was like, well, then isn't that normal? Why do we have 2 brackets below if we're really never going to be back to green? This is the new norm. Oh God, there's that word. Those 2 words. That should just be normal then. Yeah, that's it. I'm out.
Out of here.
I always found that interesting. Why did you even put those in? it's the government. What do you do? Yeah.
The U.S. government, anyway. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of not U.S. government, we got everybody tuning in from outside the U.S. today, so we can cease and desist. Rory, we're doing great, man. We're doing great. And
it sounds like Florida. There's rain every day. I mean, it's just, there's going to be rain. You know, it's going to be rain, even for 10 minutes. It's rain.
Spells of sunshine in Ireland, Rory says. Yeah, actually, when you just say, you know, it's going to rain all the time. It's going to be scattered showers, and then yeah, hey, we might get some sunshine. That's actually kind of cool.
Ireland is beautiful, though. That rain, I mean, it really is. And kissing up to Rory here, it really is the Emerald Isle. I mean, when my wife and I were there, it just everywhere you go is green. It's insane, and it's deep, rich greens. It's beautiful.
Gotta admit, that's what I love about Nashville. All the greens.
Yeah.
In the wintertime, it does get a little. Like, I look at my window here. It's like, actually, can I do that? Can I? I wonder if I can do that. Hang on a second.
He's trying something.
Can it be done? Yes, it can. So you can see my lawn, but then you see, behind there, it gets all like, whatever. So that's the way it goes around here. But yeah, it's all good. Hey, you know what? Let's bring on our guest today. Trent is, I don't know, I can't remember how far back we go at this point. It's just kind of one of those things where you just meet a bunch of people and certain people stand out. Well, you know, to me, Trent stand out like a long time ago. I want to say 2017 or so, something like that, you know, was just a super nice guy. But he's got a really cool history that we're going to learn about today. So we're going to talk about kind of his early history and how he was part of VoodooPC up there in Canada. And just working with HP on some of the gaming stuff, and then coming on board as with the Citrix Technology Advocates and Professionals program, and then now with ControlUp as one of their cool more than a talking head. He's like the guy that's actually been writing a bunch of the scripts and stuff like that.
Technical face of ControlUp.
Yeah, really, kind of awesome. So let's welcome Trentent Tye. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Doing quite well.
Wonderful.
You're talking about the weather, and all I do is I just feel jealous of all of you. Even your snow blizzard. Like, I think we just call that a Wednesday. So
yeah.
And I was actually trying to remember where I didn't want to say, because I didn't want to get this wrong, but where actually are you?
Right. So I'm based out of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And I'm actually moving in like a week up to Edmonton. So I'm moving even further north where it's even colder. So should be.
I'm sorry. Why
you do that?
Oh, it's for family.
Oh, okay.
I
was going to say, because I remember, after hockey, Canada, Michigan, we're practically Canada. Chris Pronger, when he went up there and they almost won the cup that year, how he hated it up there because it was so remote. And I just remember, like, God, remember the 80s, the early 80s, late 70s, the Edmonton dynasty, Gretzky, Messier, all them. You probably could have paid people a nickel to go up there and play for them. And then, but I don't know, maybe it's just perception, but it seems to be a hard place to sell nowadays for hockey.
Yeah.
For hockey.
Well, it's a hard place to sell in general. No one wants to move to a place where it's, minus 26 pretty much every day. Minus 26 Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. Probably pretty close to the same.
It's still cold.
This is a PG show, right? Got to keep it.
Yeah.
So you're allowed one swear word, right? Isn't that how PG? No, it's PG-13. You're allowed one swear word.
We already said Canada.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. As long as we all keep using the same one word, we should be set. Right?
It's all good. So actually, let's dive into this. So Trent, you have a really interesting history that I'm going to learn a lot today about. So why don't we start with like where you grew up and kind of the things that kind of along the path towards getting you into IT in the first place.
Sure. So I think I've got a kind of an interesting story. I think most people tend to think that they do. But yeah, I started, when I was like 18, 19, 20. I've always been in IT. And before I got into IT when I was young, I did like a lot of 3D work for my dad. He was an architect. So I would take his drawings and convert them into 3D, and then we do renderings and stuff like that. And what I would do is I would take his drawings and create them in 3D. We'd do movies and stuff, and then he'd use that to sell to whoever he's pitching that home to. Anyways, so from there I started learning, automation. Hey, I want to make this faster. Everything was always slower, and so I started getting into scripting a bit. And then from there I took like an IT course and an IT accelerator course, and I tried getting into IT. And at the time I had met my girlfriend, now my wife, and she was moving from Edmonton to Calgary. We were both in Edmonton, and I moved with her. And so I lost all my contacts to find a career in IT. And I just started applying everywhere. And the first place to respond back was a place called Voodoo Computers. They were looking for someone to do their phone support. And I had worked with HP for about 3 months before that doing phone support. They had a call center up in Canada, which I'll be completely honest is a pretty rough job to do. That you've got call times and stuff you got to churn through. It's not a great experience. So kudos to everyone who does that and does those jobs.
Yeah.
And then when I was doing Voodoo support, it's a small company. There was like 15 people, I think, at the company at the time. And I was their phone support guy, but eventually I was like, I've got these other skills. I'd like to apply them. And so I started doing their software delivery. So at the time, Voodoo had the Windows XP CD. They'd put it in each machine. They do the install F6 for drivers. Oh my God, it was a horrible manual process. And it would take like 2 or 3 days just to get the software on the system. And then when you have a process like that, it's very inconsistent, right? Different people might miss steps. They might do it differently. And then when you're doing phone support, consistency is really important. You want everything to be as similar as possible. And so when all these things were different, I was like, hey, I'm going to fix this. And so I started doing the software delivery. I automated that whole process for them. And we took, software installation from like 3 days down to an hour or two. So it was very substantial. And then I started looking at what Voodoo would do is that for every machine that they'd build, they'd run a suite of games on them, and then they'd give you the score with the system. So I started automating that process. So I automated the testing process now, and that was pretty cool. And then after a little while, Voodoo Computer being a smaller company, the owners were very stingy, I guess is the best way to put it. So I was making minimum wage for a long time with them, and I started to push for more money, and they kind of just told me, well, it's either we can't give you any more. So I walked away, and I joined Haworth as a consultant for their Active Directory for about 3 months or 6 months. And then the owner of Voodoo came back to me, and he said, hey man, we'd like to bring you back. You've done all this work for us, and we can talk about salary and stuff like that. So I did. And then shortly thereafter, HP bought Voodoo, and they wanted to get into the gaming industry. So if you imagine back then, Dell was trying to get into gaming. They had kind of failed, so they bought Alienware. And this was kind of HP's knee-jerk response. Okay, so they tried getting into gaming too, wasn't very successful, so they bought Voodoo Computers. And outside of the software delivery system, it being a small company, I actually designed a few gaming machines. So the one I'm proudest about is the Voodoo Omen. Actually, I actually have it in my home lab here. I'm still using the chassis for my servers at home.
Nice.
They're beautiful towers. If you Google Voodoo Computers, they're anodized black aluminum. We had 2 different versions, or 3 different versions. We had one with the motherboard orientated upside down, which at the time in mid 2000s wasn't a problem. But then as chipsets started to get hotter, they had heat pipes, which if you don't know what a heat pipe is, it's directional. So when you flip the motherboard upside down, now the heat's just staying at the top. So for all those motherboards, we water cooled them all. water-cooled the chipsets, and then we moved on to rotating the motherboard properly, and then we created another version that has what I call the floating face. So it was the Voodoo face on the tower, and it was floating a bit in front of it. So very, very cool job. And designing those machines was awesome. Then when I got into HP after the acquisition, they were trying to find where everyone wants to go, and I got put into the R&D department, where we started researching, new technologies to use in gaming machines and the design themselves. So I helped design the HP Omen, which is, if you see images of it, just take a Google on it. You can see it's just this tower, just this monolith of a machine, and it was pretty cool. 7 inches wide. We tried to make it as thin as possible, but when you push down, it bulges up. So the tower is huge. It's like 2.5 feet tall or something like that. But it was probably the most expensive gaming machine Voodoo had ever created, HP had ever created. They only made 10 of them, and they recalled all of them. So I actually have 2 in my possession, a black one and a silver one, so engineering samples. And then my little brother had, just right before the production run, they call them PVD, production validation test units. So he's got one there, and he's got wood side panels. It's all textured, very cool. But I think those are the only 3 in existence today. So pretty cool machines. But then recession hit, and HP Gaming was a victim of it. So it got closed down, and had to find another job. And I got connected in with a job in healthcare, doing Active Directory support there. And then I started doing consulting on the side, and I got a job for another company doing Active Directory, but they needed a Citrix admin. And so I transitioned over from consultancy to a Citrix admin. And I'd never touched Citrix before. In the interview process, my pledge to the guy was that, listen, if you hire me, I will absolutely be the best Citrix admin you will have. Like, I will invest everything I can to getting up to speed as quickly as possible. They did, and I thank them for taking the risk on me, and I would like to think it worked out well for them, at least for the period that I was with them. And then in Alberta, which is where I'm from, where we have a big oil and gas industry, and there's ebbs and flows with that, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the challenges with Alberta is that most of our oil and gas is from the oil sands, which is pretty energy intensive to remove the oil out of. And so when the price of oil goes down, there tends to be a lot of layoffs. And then when the price goes up, there tends to be a lot of rehires. And so same thing happened again. Price went down. They laid off a bunch of people. And then I found another job as working for the government, Alberta Health Services, as their Citrix admin. And originally I started there as helping their migration from their XenApp farms, XenApp 4, 4.5, and 6 to 6.5. And that was a long process. I think it took us like 4 or 5 years to complete. If you can imagine, Alberta Health Services is a pretty big organization. I think there was like 110,000 employees, and there was always constantly about 20,000 Citrix sessions. So pretty big environment spread across multiple geographic regions. So it was kind of like my playground to understand all these technologies, how they work, what the components are. If you shut this one down, what's the impact?
Yeah.
And so I really got to play with that, and that's where a lot of my blog posts and stuff started coming out. And then the tying in the technology, I started getting into AppV quite a bit, because the potential for it was tremendous, right? Like, really the dream when you're talking these EUC environments is that one image at the bottom, and then you can just layer things on top. And if you can do that, and then you can just keep that layer interchangeable. So if you go from 2008 R2 to 2012, 2012 R2, 2016, if you can just keep that interchangeable with the AppV being on top, then it makes your job so much easier, at least in terms of support. So that's what we found. And I did a lot of work to make sure the applications that we had were going to work on AppV. I actually, as far as I understand, I'm the only person who actually virtualized Epic. So it's a massive healthcare application. And Epic at the time, they were really resistant to it. Of course they are, because they keep really tight constraints on their performance. But they told me, if you can make it work, then we'll go with it. But as soon as there's a performance problem, we want to test it without it. And if we can do that, then and prove that it's not the app V that's causing the performance problem, then we'll continue with your solution.
Mhm.
So I started going in that direction, ran into a whole bunch of problems with the implementation of app V. Yeah, that's right, Rory. App V never got a fair shake. So yeah, anyways, started going in that direction, found like registry staging was like a real performance issue that we had. We had some bizarre issues where people would launch an application and performance would just be terrible. But if someone launched it like half hour later, their performance would be good. And it turns out it was just registry staging and how long that took. So like the nuances of AppV and learning that helped me get my Microsoft MVP. And then from there, I really wanted to be a Citrix CTP. I wanted to be one like pretty much as soon as I learned about Citrix and I started searching for stuff. And to be, one of the crazy things like DJ that you're doing here and Jeff, back when I was just starting as a Citrix admin, and generally those teams are small, and if you're working for a small company or a smaller company, you're kind of by yourself. Like you might be the only Citrix admin. And so you start looking around the community for help, right? Like, hey, I'm running into this problem. Can someone help me? And at the time there was Twitter, there was people who had their own blogs and stuff. And I remember one was, I posted on, I think, Andrew Morgan's blog about something that he'd come up with, and I followed it, but I was still having a problem. And he responded back to me. And it was the first time that I had reached for outside help and someone had attempted to help me. I don't think it came up with a solution, but just that feeling of like, hey, you're not alone in the universe is like, I'm taking that lesson as something to be super important, right? And so I feel like I try really hard. If anyone reaches out to me for help for anything, then like, help them. Just try. Yeah. Right? Let them know they're not alone. Yeah, and then over some time, I managed to do enough contributions that Citrix admitted me to the CTP program, and then likewise, actually, Rory commenting on here, he encouraged me to get into the vExpert program as well. So I applied for that with my contributions, and I was able to get in. So, I am where I am because you're standing on the shoulders of giants. So if I can be one of those pillars that someone can stand on, then that'll make me pretty happy that you can help elevate someone up.
Indeed. We should show people the.
Oh yeah, that's the original Voodoo Omen. So this one, actually, I think this was like Rev 2 of the version because it's got the hole cut at the bottom. But every one of these review systems, I did every single one of them. Always got phenomenal scores. We always won everything all the time. Yeah.
I was actually trying to find the one that I was fairly certain that I had kind of some sort of iteration of one of these, and I was trying to find it. But yeah, the one I had, at least now we're going back to like 2005,
2004, 2005. I think we introduced it end of 2003. The Omen that you're seeing there. So that's the new Voodoo Omen, the one that you've got in that picture. So that's the kind of
so that was a new one from HP. Right?
Yeah, so they started the new HP gaming division, I think like 3 or 4 years ago now. Obviously they didn't consult me, so that's why it's tilted on its side at a 45. I mean, they're trying.
Yeah, it's something I was wondering about too. Yeah.
So now we know where the intertubes are. They're in the Voodoo Omen.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or the HP Omen. Yeah.
The HP Omen. Yeah, the Voodoo Omen was better. I think Lee & Lee was the chassis manufacturer. So if you're looking for a very similar case, then Lee & Lee is the way to go. So if you've ever had a Lee & Lee chassis, it's very much like it's very well done. Everything is well thought out. All the edges are chamfered. You're not going to cut your hand on like the sheet metal or anything like that. They've done a phenomenal job. Everything is thumb screws, right? So you just need to finger tighten.
Yeah, good stuff. So I'm curious. So we want to talk about ControlUp in a few minutes, but I kind of want to lead into this because I'm just in hearing your story, I can hear a progression of kind of some things that were true of my early career too, where you're presented with a process and you're like, well, this process sucks. So, and you optimize it and just kind of iterate and that sort of thing. So I'm just kind of, I want to break down a little bit more about what do you think caused you to be willing to do that? Because a lot of people, in information technology are perfectly good just staying where they are, and they just are either unconcerned or afraid to move forward. So I'm just curious what it is about your personality or whatever that you noticed that caused you to be that person that said, you know what, we can try to do this better.
Yeah, when I worked for Alberta Health Services, I actually worked for a team. There was a team of 6 of us on the Citrix team. So it was the largest team I'd ever worked on at the time. And one of the challenges, certainly I saw that you kind of alluded to, DJ, was, existing processes. A lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot of people, generally you want to punch in, punch out, right? Like you want to do your 9 to 5. And I feel like when it comes to evaluating processes, I think a lot of people, they're comfortable with things they don't want change because it's predictable, it's standard, and then you can punch in and punch out, right? You're not really interested in improving anything because, it's hard. It's difficult to do. Change is scary. Excuse me. And what I found is, well, at least working with Alberta Health Services, that's my healthcare, right? So if I can help a doctor, work more efficiently, then that's really important. One of the biggest, I think, influencers I had at the time when I was working at AHS is a doctor had actually created a video that talked about a patient that they had that was having like severe problems in Red Deer. So it's a small city between Calgary and Edmonton, like 50,000 people to give you an idea of the size of it. And so the hospital is fairly small there, well, smaller than the major cities. And this person was degrading in their health. So they were getting sicker. The hospital didn't have the resources to support them. And what the doctor was talking about, he was talking about the 2-factor ID token, the RSA token that he had, the physical one. And he could connect in through our Citrix environment and monitor the health of this person as it was going down, all remotely. So they weren't in Red Deer, they were based out of somewhere else. And they can actually see this person, and as their health degraded, they made the call, okay, we need to move them to a major hospital that has the proper facilities. And they loaded them up on the helicopter. The helicopter had, connectivity, Wi-Fi connectivity. So this doctor could actually monitor them as they were being transported. And then the hospital that they were being transported to, they had all the information that they needed to make the correct, call on how to help this person. And the doctor talked about how that has changed like his life and how telemedicine is changing things because you can keep on top of your patients the entire step of the way. You don't lose visibility, right? So the doctor who's servicing them doesn't need to be there, but they can be the one who watches them from end to end. And so when he was telling that story and he was telling about how Citrix has enabled that for him, I felt like that spoke really strongly to me. And then it meant, we can't settle with just implementing just standard processes. We need to make sure that things are getting better because it helps people, right? So when that kind of ties into ControlUp a little bit, when I was at AHS, we had a major problem that was occurring daily. So we rolled out our 6.5 farm, we'd migrated users over, and what we found is in the morning and in the evening, all of a sudden, no one could launch their applications. We were trying to figure out why. And so we actually got like a Citrix consultant to fly in because this is a major issue, right? Like this was affecting provincial applications. So, 20,000 people couldn't launch Epic or something like that. And the Citrix tech essentially came in, he looked at our architecture and he said, nope, this is no good. You have to break it up into, multiple different sites or whatever it's called, in farms, multiple different farms. And we didn't want to do that because the management overhead of additional Citrix installations and making sure they're all in sync is like, it's a lot. So again, this goes back to making sure the process is better and improved. So I spent a lot of time understanding, well, what happens in that authentication part? What happens when you're trying to log into, at the time, web interface, and you're not getting your applications? And I found web interface was intentionally hobbled by, well, not intentionally, it was hobbled by IIS. It had some limits on it with regards to the ASP requests. Like you could increase the number of limits in a queue. And when we did that, the problem went away. It went away for like 2 weeks, and then it started coming again. But the second time when it came, we're looking at web interface and all the metrics look good. Like the response time for the ASP and everything was good. So what happened is that the load moved. You you had this rush of users coming in, and they were overloading the web interface server. When we fixed that, that load now moved to man, I'm really trying to remember the terminology. It's delivery controllers, and then it was what was it before that? Let's see if you can earn your 6.5 administration.
Oh well, no such thing.
The brokers,
I can't
right?
remember.
There was like it was an election process. Why are you making me geek out right now, man? Come on.
Anyway,
But you had just one who's kind of the top dog.
It was like a PDC. It was like a PDC with Active Directory. And you had an election. One of them became the master. If that went down for X, God, that all just came flooding back. That was scary.
Oh, Corey's got it. Well, the data collectors, was that? Yeah, ZDCs. That's it. The zone data collectors.
Go places I didn't want to go, but the zone data collector. That's one function of it, but that actually wasn't. Yeah,
you might still have it running in the environment. You don't
you
remember
you could have data collectors that weren't the election. Whatever.
So all the load went there, and then we're trying to understand like what are the limits there. You had like 16 threads was your maximum number of limits, and when you've got 20,000 users logging on, you hit that limit very quickly.
Oh yeah.
So you could spread it out with NetScaler, and so that's what we did. We put a NetScaler in front, and we had our two ZDCs out there in front of it, but we were still getting overloaded. And what was happening is we brought ControlUp in at that point. We'd reached out when these problems had started to 8 or 9 different monitoring vendors. And every single one except for ControlUp required us to set up a sales call, required us to spin up virtual machines, and set up some kind of infrastructure. And for us, it's like, we're having this problem today. We need to solve like today before tomorrow. And these guys are like, well, let's set up a call for next week and we can get our software up and running then. And it's like, no, you don't understand. We need this fixed like today. Like we're willing to purchase something because we need this fixed. We need some visibility as to what's happening. We brought ControlUp in, and it had the live metrics for everything that our problem was. It was almost like the product was tailor-made for this problem. So it showed all of the web interface stuff in the grid. It showed like the number of threads and stuff. And what we could see, this was really cool, is that we could see the number of threads going up on one data collector, and then it would drop. And then it would go up on another data collector and then drop, and then go up on another data collector and drop. And when you've got that real-time feedback, that cause and effect, we could start seeing, what's happening? The NetScaler is flipping between them. And so what ended up happening is that the NetScaler load balancer, one of our NetScaler guys decided that when you query for your list of applications, it should come back in 5 seconds or less. So he set a timeout on the NetScaler for that query to be five seconds. So then what was happening is as the load was going up, like Citrix by default, I think is 20. As the load started going up, one of the responses would take longer than 5 seconds. And so it would mark that guy down and then go to the next one. And then once he started going up, it would mark him down, but then it would flip the next one up. And so we just kept getting this flapping issue. And ControlUp was showing us this with the waves going up and down and up and down. I actually have a video for it. I gave a demonstration to HIMSS, I think in 2017 at the Citrix partner booth there, where it showed this happening. So it was really wild, but it was really, really simple to see what was going on. Because from our perspective, like our infrastructure looked good, right? Like we're under our 20-second threshold. I had no idea the NetScaler guys had did this. So once we figured that out, once we removed the NetScaler from the equation, we found, okay, that's how it was misconfigured, and ControlUp showed that pretty simply. So I became an advocate for the tool, mostly for that cause and effect portion, right? Like you can actually see the statistics and everything. If you haven't seen ControlUp, highly recommend you go download it and check it out. Like I was saying before, there's no infrastructure to set up. It's a portable app if you want to test it. Just double click it and run. But yeah, with ControlUp, we were able to see all that, and it just became like night and day visible. And the cause and effect that you can do with ControlUp, where if you see like a process having 100% CPU, right click on it, terminate that process all from ControlUp, and then you see the CPU drop, like that, understanding that feedback really helps you as a person, like understand like what these things are doing and their impacts on them, right? And then you can see it from a bigger level. Like I think we all intuitively understand Task Manager, right? Like Task Manager, when you see a process is at 100%, you understand what it's doing. It's consuming CPU. You can, adjust its process priority, affinity, or whatever. And I feel like ControlUp's taken like almost that philosophy of like using Task Manager and experiencing it and taking it and showing it for everyone else. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Optimizing.
That sounds almost a little too convenient, though, Trent. You had this problem that ControlUp was. Your words were something like it was like they designed it for us.
Yeah.
Might want to look into that. A little suspicious there.
Right. Man, well, the product is designed for everyone for sure. There's like I recorded this. I did it live, so I got a ticket come in, and what happened is I decided, okay, I'm going to record my screen because I was on call, and I'm going to record my screen and I'll actually use ControlUp to solve this problem. I didn't know I was going to use ControlUp. I just assumed because we were using it for everything. But essentially, it was an application wouldn't launch. User would click the app, and you'd get that little message saying like the path couldn't be found. So you'd connect to the Citrix server, but the application wouldn't be there. Of course, the application being AppV is pretty simple to say, okay, it's probably an AppV package didn't load on the server. Well, I told you the size of our environment. We had like 400 servers. Could you imagine trying to look across 400 servers for which one is missing its exe? And these are geographically spread, right? So you're talking, there's latency there. If you're trying to query, 200 servers from one in a different geographical location, that time will take you hours. And before ControlUp, it did take us hours. So we'd run into these problems and just struggle with them. Like we know what the problem was, just we need to find that one machine so we could set it to maintenance mode or turn it off and not accept logons. But with ControlUp, I could just select all my machines, right click, do one action, and it listed them all. So I recorded myself doing this just to see what would happen. And within 5 minutes, I was able to do what took us like 2 or 3 hours in the past. So again, just the power and potential of it was just wild to me that you could do this. So all of a sudden I was really happy because I was my on-call was a minimum 3 hours. So it sucked in the past that I had to use all 3 hours to try to find like that type of machine. But with ControlUp, I could find it in 5 minutes, get back to my day, and still get paid for 3 hours worth of work. So it was, it was really good for me. Cost me some money though, because the on-call pay and the overtime went way down.
Well, there's money earned by good methods and money that just hurts to earn. So
that's right.
Yeah, I'd rather earn like $20 doing something I enjoy than $100, being up at 3 a.m. doing something I hate. So
yeah, I was going to say being woken up, having to log, get in, troubleshoot something, and search servers for hours on end for an executable. Fun stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the amount of stress you get at that moment, especially, if you're by yourself, is like, it's real, right? Like, I think that's what causes a lot of people to burn out. I know I would be just like killing myself. Like, you're just like, okay, well, how can I solve this problem as quickly as possible? People are calling the help desk and they're pinging you constantly. Like, is it solved yet? Is it solved yet? Is it solved yet? What's the root cause? And you're like, Rory, you got paid for on-call work.
It's interesting. You brought up your work with Epic, and if for those that aren't familiar with Epic, this is a big program, and it is.
Use your words carefully.
No, it's not in a bad way, but I mean it's an EMR, it's an electronic medical record. It's going to be big, and you mentioned packaging it with AppV, which is astounding because I know even from my work with Unidesk, when we tried getting Epic working, Liquidware with FlexApp trying to get, you had discovered before everyone else that they have a boatload of registry entries that get loaded. And that, that to me, that you found that and were able to get that working in AppV, is truly astounding to me, knowing the work and time and effort we put into that. And I think that, to me, that speaks to your tenacity in figuring out what is the problem, and working on it until you get it solved, or you figure out, what, it's just not going to happen. But I think a lot of people, you talked about like punching in 9 to 5. I'm gonna take a very educated guess that you weren't punching in 9 to 5 working on trying to get Epic working. So that's the attitude I think more people need to have, is that when you're working with technology, this stuff doesn't take a break. Even if you have a 9 to 5 company, those things are still running overnight. There's still things that can happen. And, it's a beautiful thing when it works. It's ugly as anything when it doesn't. But if you can make it better, or you can do something, you got to take that shot, that opportunity, not only to make your life easier, but like you said, all of the customers' lives easier. One of my first jobs was my first real job was actually server admin at a local hospital here in Grand Rapids. And this was when we had a data center, but this was still young, Novell 312, right? So Windows NT was just coming out, but like the ER had their own server because it was the ER. They didn't want to rely on what we had at the time and things like that. And the first time I had to go visit that server, you walk through an ER, and I don't know if I just hit it at the exact wrong time, but you see blood on the floor, you see patient, it's like that hits you, and you realize that this is life or death. If someone can't access that information, you could be, the cause of someone's death. And that's just stuff that you need to take to heart, and find, if you think you can find a way to make something better in those situations, that's what you do. It's just, don't sit around on your hands. Don't just punch in, punch out.
I think at least from some of the people who are on my team, they're very much click type people. Is kind of how we described it. Right? Like, you're only interested in like the UI, which is totally fine. But you need to understand, you need to invest the time to understand what something does, right? Like, especially when you're talking Citrix and you're talking like the DDCs and stuff like that, the delivery controllers, you should understand what that is, what their limits are in your environment. Try to find some way of testing it. It's not easy to do that level of stuff, but it's possible. And there's a whole community out there. And the reason why that's important is kind of like, to your point, Jeff, that if you don't understand what these limits are and stuff starts to break, it's hard to come up with solutions. You can generally come up with brute force solutions, stand up another Citrix site, stand up another Citrix site, stand up another Citrix site, and now you've got 20 Citrix sites, and your problem has changed from one performing poorly to 20 that are completely inconsistent now.
Yeah.
Right. So it's hard, I think, for people to understand how to troubleshoot. And something that I really want to change, and I'm kind of thinking about this right now, is like I'm thinking about doing live streams of problems that I encounter in my home lab and how I go about solving them. Yeah. So a lot of the tools I use is like Procmon, Wireshark, all those kind of things. And I think a lot of people are kind of intimidated by those tools, and they don't want to invest the time to learn them because they're complex and they're hard, and you get a screen full of data and you say, well, what do I do with this? Right. So I think if there's like some real examples showing how to do it, I think it might be worth it. So it's an idea I'm toying with, and once I finish my move, I might try to start something there.
We'd be happy to
give you an example of something. Yeah. Well, more people should do it too. But I'll give you an example of something like I was working on is, I've got a home lab, but I'm working with multiple EUC technologies because that's what we do with ControlUp. And so I came up with an idea. I don't want to have two RDSH machines for RDS. I don't want to have two RDSH machines for Citrix. I don't want to have two RDSH machines for Horizon. I don't want to have two RDSH machines for like Nutanix Frame. It's just all of a sudden my infrastructure needs to grow just to accommodate that. Well, what if I could put them all on one machine?
Yeah.
So I like PVS, love PVS. I think anyone who's ever touched that technology falls in love with it pretty quick. And PVS doesn't work with Horizon because the agent doesn't know it's on a PVS machine. It doesn't know it needs to re-register. That process isn't developed. So I started digging into how the Horizon agent contacts back and how it can register itself with the connection server. And so I was using Procmon and trying to figure it out. And what I found is that if you do like a repair reinstall, it registers with the connection server. So I could have a PVS machine boot up, just do a repair reinstall and away to go. But you talk about persistence, that's kind of a brute force solution. Don't really like that. So I started procmoning, going through the logs and really trying to understand which parts of the install is the one that does this. And I've actually figured it out now. So I figured out how it communicates. It's got certificates, so that way it's got secure level of communication between the target device and the connection server. And now I've written a script for BIFs. If I'm not familiar with BIFs, it's Base Image Scripting Framework. It's an amazing platform that Matthias Schlimm has written. But I've got a plugin for there now where I can just drop this script in. And now when my PVS machine boots up, it connects to Citrix and it connects to Horizon. And with just some group policy, and some registry entries, it can connect to the RDSH as well. So now I've got one machine that can service all three environments. So when I was doing that, I was like, man, it would be really good if I recorded this, so that way people could see, the progression, and then maybe it helps them understand, like, okay, this is kind of like a way to troubleshoot. This is a way you can start tackling these problems. So hopefully soon.
I think part of the big problem nowadays, and I'm going to do my old man impersonate. Well, all right, not impersonation, but back when I started
back in my day,
get off my lawn, you darn kids. You could be an expert in things, and you had time to study and figure things out. Nowadays, IT staff is cut pretty slim. They're typically overworked, the whole thing, right? And coming, and now telling someone, because there's, a lot, let's say small to medium, that don't have dedicated like Citrix teams or, things like that. So you got these people that are just kind of doing it along with everything else. And it's very hard to take that time. It's very hard to mentally take that time and, man, I got to figure this stuff out too. And so, and that's where the community comes in to be able to help is, it's, you don't necessarily need to be an expert. I think it's a disservice to not know those things, especially like an infrastructure piece like Citrix that is relied upon heavily. You really should know that stuff, but I can also see the flip side of it where people just go, I don't have it. I don't have the time. And so that becomes very hard. And it's too bad. I mean, there's classes out there in DJ. I know you've worked on some of this stuff, but I remember when Brian Madden was doing his classes, Sean Bass and I took over for a while teaching those. Those were the things we went into, were those deep dive, the things you'd never get from a Citrix class. We went deep dive over 5 days into here's where bottlenecks are. How does Windows paging work? How does the printing, the detailed steps of paged and non-paged memory, and all that good stuff. And I like to believe those people were better off having that understanding of those processes to be able to help them troubleshoot faster, quicker, and smarter versus just kind of throwing stuff at the wall to see what hits. Now that's where the advantage of like a ControlUp comes in is it most definitely helps you to identify. Now I'm just, I don't want to get into that, but I think one of the hard parts with any sort of monitoring software right now, and this is not a dig at ControlUp direct is that there can be a glut of information, and understanding how all the metrics tie into each other can be daunting. Because you're right, we look at Task Manager CPU high. Oh yeah, I know what to do with that. But if you've got 3 different pieces that are showing 3 different issues, how do they tie together? What are these things, and what's the method to try to alleviate what one is seeing versus another, that type of thing. So I don't know where I was going with it anymore, but it's a daunting task having to learn all these ins and outs. And now, because it's even more complicated than ever, getting more complicated by the day. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I would love to see some of those deep dive classes really come back, non-vendor backed classes where you can lay it all out without fear of retribution or whatever, or getting spanked off on the side, and being able to really go in depth and talk about not just Citrix, but really anything. How does it work? Where does it work? Blah blah blah. So I'm going to shut up now.
This is kind of crazy. Jeff actually didn't know. Jeff didn't know I was going to announce this, but we actually are hosting office hours tomorrow. So if you want to register for that, it's about an hour and a half long. You can register on that site and come ask me anything about this kind of thing. So this is actually one of the things that I was going to bring up is asking the people that are there what kind of courses they want. So Jeff didn't know I was going to do this, but that is something we're doing tomorrow. So try and do this once a month. And so this is kind of an experiment. So you just click on thrive-it.com/office hours, and that'll take you to that upcoming month's office hours registration. So you can get registered and get reminded and all that kind of stuff. But right now we're going to try it over Zoom and see what happens. So that is that. Also want to let you know that there is, what am I going to do here? Oh, there it is. Sorry. My book, I'm almost done with the course, and that's one of the things I wanted to talk about too in the office hours, just kind of update everyone on that. So that's something that's going on. So that is available soon. The beta is available now. So if you go to thrive-it.com/justdothis, you can get a discount on the book, but by entering the code THRIVEcast. But at the end of that process, there's a way to get signed up for that beta of that course too. So the course is on doing virtual assessments and that sort of thing, and how to actually conduct, document, and then present your findings on that. So that's really exciting to get that developed. So I wanted to give the guys a chance to take a break, but let's get back to it with Trent. I have a question, sir. Let me pull this up. Maybe? Is it gonna go? There we go. What
That is not me.
I was curious. I was going to tell people about your site. I was like, whoa. Yeah. So yeah, updating this to, and I need to pull up the other link here. But so this is your
GitHub pages.
Yeah. So updating your blog to GitHub, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that process, why you're doing that. And you won't have this guy's picture.
No, he's gone. It's just text. So I don't know how many people know, but Aaron Parker, I think he was kind of the first one to pioneer the moving to GitHub pages, at least among like maybe our space. And so he wrote a blog article about it. And when I was a Microsoft MVP, I'm hosting WordPress on my Azure site, or on my Azure instance. And now that I'm no longer an MVP, I'm paying for that. So I started looking at ways to not pay for it, and Aaron's article came up, so I started reading it and following it. So I've tried to start to migrate to GitHub pages. I still have a lot of work to do because it looks like terrible, but at least the content's there, right? So now, eventually, when I shut down my WordPress site, I will still have mine up. So that's why it is what it is right now, and I haven't updated in a couple of years because I've been migrating, and a lot of the technical content I'm posting anyways is on ControlUp's site.
Yeah, that's where I was going with this, is like, where is it? Because I know you've been working on stuff. So
yeah. There's lots of upcoming content coming up. Trying to improve my quality now that I'm kind of paid to do that, which ends up taking a bit longer. But yeah, it'll be coming soon. So I was talking about the agent and the Horizon agent working with PBS, so that'll be coming out hopefully, in a couple of weeks or a month or so once I finish it. But yeah, that'll be coming up on the ControlUp's site.
Awesome. Well, I just had to give you a hard time because that was hilarious. And, like,
well, yeah. I need a picture of you, DJ, doing that on the laptop.
Yeah, do like the.
Welcome to Trentent Tye's site, DJ.
Awesome. Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour, so what I want to do is a little segment we call Final Thoughts. So, Trent, any final thoughts on our discussion today and takeaways, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think if you're getting into the IT field, it can be really intimidating because you're going to be wrong a lot. And it's really hard to put yourself out there when you could be wrong. I don't know how to say it. You got to do it. You got to be, humble. You have to be just open to criticism. It's not an easy field. Things are complex, and you have to be willing to learn. You can't be right all the time. You can't learn everything and be right all the time either. So you just have to be open with, accepting feedback and trying to learn and do better. I think it's really important.
Awesome. Well, Trent, thanks for being on with us today. Really appreciate it. I know we got to let you go for the next thing, but come back anytime, man. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
You got it. Yeah, you guys are. Thanks a lot.
All right, we're gonna kick you back into the green room here real quick, and if I can get the thing to go, there it goes. All right, Jeff, final thoughts.
Yeah, so I think Trent brings up a lot of great points. I know I've said it a million times, but it's amazing how we work in a field of constant change. We are the most afraid of change. And I think that does get in the way of a lot of improvements. I know as a sales engineer, as a consultant, how many times I have heard somebody say, well, this works. We're just not going to touch it. What if we can improve it? No, it works. And we don't want to break anything. Okay. It's frustrating. It can be frustrating. But then again, I've caught myself doing the same type of thing. So it's just human nature. But don't be afraid to try new things. I'm not saying do it in production. That'd be stupid. But hey, it is what it is. Seriously though, take a chance, look for improvements because the technology changes every day. And what you put into place yesterday isn't going to be replaced in a day, but there may be pieces and parts that will make your life a heck of a lot easier. His example at Voodoo Computers, automating that install process, I had to do the same thing with Windows 95 and Office, and we were converting desktops and everything. We went from, days of installs that were inconsistent to hours. And, multiple desktops being done at a time versus one at a time. So that's what I got to say today. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. All right. Well, yes, thank you for being with us again this week. We've got some exciting stuff coming up. We've got some exciting guests. I can't say who they are yet. It's killing me. But we've got some exciting guests coming up that are going to be wonderful to hear from. But we love hearing these stories. We love all these different perspectives and things, and finding these threads that bring us all together. And so my encouragement to everybody would be to embrace betterment, to embrace that concept of, this might be what it is right now, but this doesn't have to be how it has to stay. I can contribute even small little things to make what I do more effective and better for those that I serve. And to be honest with you, if you don't have an attitude of service, then the odds of you being successful in your IT career long term are not great. That's just the way it is. If you want to just stay right where you are, then by all means have a bad attitude. But if you can have an attitude that says, you know what, I'm going to try and improve what I see in front of me, and that is what your mindset is, then I think you can see in all these examples, we've done 43 of these now, and you can see a thread of all these where the people that really got to a better place in their life and the career were the people that really said, you know what, I know that this can be better, and I'm going to try and do that. And I'm going to try and encourage those in the community to do the same. So that is my encouragement to you. We will see you all next time. Make sure you do get subscribed. If you're not viewing this on YouTube, you can go to thrive-it.com/subme to get subscribed. And while you're there, go ahead and hit the like button. That is the YouTube way of saying not only that you approve of this, but it's YouTube's way of saying, hey, I know 15 people just like you, and I'm going to show this to them. So that helps us spread the word. But you know what? You can also share. Will you have my permission to share this video right now? You can do it for free. You don't even have to pay me for it. You can share it with your friends right now. Anyway, it's been a lot of fun. We will see you next time for another THRIVEcast. Have a great